Hey everyone, ZCrazyG here, back with another Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time video. It's coming close to about a month and a half away from release, and man, it's so exciting to think that it won't be long before we can experience it. I cannot describe my excitement for this game. From everything we've seen so far, it's shaping up to be the perfect sequel I've always wanted from this franchise. The level design, the style, the personality, it just seems to encompass everything that the original trilogy did so well while innovating in all the right places. But we of course haven't seen everything. Of course there is only so much they can show us beforehand, and there's still many elements that I have my expectations high for. And that is what I want to discuss today, the few things that I am still wanting to see in Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time. First up, I want to see the story take a different direction. What direction exactly? I don't mind. Just as long as it's not the run-of-the-mill villains want to take over the world and we have to stop them and not much else beyond that. Now, okay, granted, that is the main basis for a lot of stories in most mediums, but the Crash franchise rarely ever delved much deeper outside of that initial basis. With a series such as this with a cast of wonderfully colourful characters with lots of personality, the opportunity to tell a more wackier, grander story just begs to be taken. And I believe it can be done without having it feel out of place or unusual for the series. Thankfully, Crash 4 does seem to be placing a much bigger focus on story. Not only is the initial setup with the villains trying to take over the multiverse already adding more stakes to the situation, but with a bigger focus on cutscenes, it's telling of more character-driven moments here. There's more exploration into the story elements like the ancient masks with the quantum masks, and a seemingly more interesting dynamic with the villains. It's almost as if Entropy will be the main villain this time as opposed to Cortex. The interactions we've seen definitely show a bitter tension between them, which kind of builds off how Entropy viewed Cortex in Crash Warped. Uka Uka sort of seems to be strangely absent here as well. Like in this shot here, once they've opened the portal and escape, Uka Uka is just sitting there passed out and they just seemingly leave him. There's a lot of interesting threads to play with here, and it could make for a much more interesting delve into these characters. I also just love these little character quirks of characters like Dingodar retiring from villainy to open a diner. That's just really amusing, and I like how it sort of draws him into the game's events as well. And I'd love to see how other characters would be roped into this story and how it would all play out. And with the more larger-than-life animations and personality within this art style the characters show this time around, it just gives them the perfect opportunity to go all out here and tell a funny, cool, and entertaining narrative, which I certainly hope they take. So, the game has already established that it will feature multiple playable characters outside of Crash himself. You can switch to Coco at any time during his levels, essentially allowing you to play the whole game as her. Now, we already knew from the reveal that Cortex would have his own stages, and I'm sure we all had that same reaction during the State of Play. This is good, this is good, this is good. Oh, shit! Yep, even Dingodar is playable in this game, and it hints at even more playable characters as well. Now, that is awesome, and just really cool to be able to play as characters other than Crash, each with their own unique gameplay styles. However, I just hope that they get the balance of this right. What I mean by this is that they are going down the route of having each of the other playable characters have their own unique style of platforming gameplay. Now, obviously, the main gameplay style we come here for is Crash's levels. That's what we want the main bulk of the levels to consist of. So these other levels in which you play as the other characters with different styles, they'll be there to supplement the main levels in a way to temporarily change the pace of the gameplay and add more variety. So we don't want to see too many of these to the point where it indulges the main gameplay style, but at the same time though, we shouldn't just let these be one and done concepts. They need to strike the right balance here so that we can explore these alternate gameplay gameplay styles and experiment with them while not overdoing it. I mean, it seems like Crash 4 already has plenty of levels as it is, so I'm confident that they will be able to achieve this. I expect that Cortex will have the most levels from all the other playable characters with his alternate looks on these stages, and then all the other playable characters like Dingodile, they'll maybe get a small handful each, about 3 or 4 at the most I imagine. Vehicle levels in Crash Bandicoot games can be a love them or hate them thing. They've always been integrated into Crash's DNA from the start with the animal riding levels. Personally, I think when done well and balanced within the game correctly, they're awesome and a great way to break up the pacing of the platforming while also offering variety, much like the other playable characters do. Though this is something that I personally feel that both Crash 3 and Wrath of Cortex, don't worry, I'll be getting onto that game soon, are both guilty of getting wrong. Now that's not to say they don't have good vehicle levels, because both games certainly do have fantastically designed and really fun vehicle levels, but they did implement too many of these ideas at once and gave them way too much focus, to the point where I feel like it took away from the platforming, and it doesn't help that I don't think the majority of them were that good either. This is something that Crash 4 needs to avoid. In fact, I think the game could do with taking a couple notes from Crash 2 here. Only focus on a couple of well-designed and fun vehicle concepts and give them a small few levels each. Once again, much like the other playable characters' different gameplay types, it's about striking the balance between keeping the focus on what we love most about the franchise and good quality variety. And the final thing I still want to see is better boss fights. Now don't get me wrong, Crash Bandicoot has had a decent selection of bosses that range from okay to shit to good, but I wouldn't really say that there's any that really reach out to me and make me go, oh yeah, that was such a fantastic and memorable boss fight. Some have come close, but I think that they really could tap into some great potential here. I think that they should strive for boss fights that not only utilize your own abilities in creative ways, but also the boss's abilities. Most of Crash's villains roster is made up of characters who each have a defining power trait or weapons. So really go nuts and make a boss fight that uses the boss's powers in really unique and surprising ways. Like, imagine that when you're fighting Entropy, he could manipulate the flow of time to put you at a disadvantage. And to counteract that, you could perhaps use the abilities of Capu Noir, the Time Mask. There's so much possibility they could explore here, and with the much more ambitious scale they're playing with this game, I think that there's so much they could do with this. Also, make them difficult. One thing I seem to find with the Crash games, in a series known for its challenging platforming, the parts you would expect to be the most difficult, the boss fights, tend to be some of the easiest parts of the game. Now, no doubt, I still think the series has good boss fights, but when I look at other platformers and how they have dealt with boss fights, I can't help but think there's such an opportunity to go bigger, more creative, and more challenging with these boss showdowns. And those are the things that I still want to see in Crash Bandicoot 4. Now, I still have the utmost faith in this game, and I'm confident Toys for Bob will deliver on a fantastic end product. But hey, there's no harm in sharing our ideas, hopes, and concerns. It's all part of the excitement and hype to the build-up. And I'm sure many of you have things that you want to see that we don't know too much about yet. So as always, share your thoughts down below and let's start some conversation. And with that guys, thank you all so much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe if you feel like it, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care guys.